I've really been looking forward to this session because they're going to tell us how to assess student learning without giving them exams. I think my students would be all for that, depending on what it is they're going to ask them to do. So I invited two nice speakers for this presentation, and I think you'll enjoy their presentation very much. Trish McClung, I'm sure you know, a member of our education faculty, and Alex Sandoval, also a member of the education faculty. Alex and I went to China together when he was an undergrad, and it's when he fell in love with his wife. She fainted in the middle of the street, but I don't think that was the cause.
I'm deployed.
That was deployed.
That's deployed. I'll claim it.
Okay, I was thinking today why I kind of got involved in this kind of assessment, and then I had an happening this afternoon in my SPED 316 class, which is the class that Alex and I teach together. So we've worked a lot on this class, trying to develop different ideas. And so today I gave a traditional multiple choice test and a matching activity. And the matching activity was last. And so towards the end of the session, you know, you could hear this sort of like buzz of discomfort. And I realized that I had 10 items and only 9 definitions. So, you know, so I thought, that's why, Trish, you don't do those kind of traditional tests. And so, you know, one girl sidled up and said, so then I felt obliged to write some kind of definition on the board, and then I said, well, maybe I'll give you an extra point, because I felt responsible that I hadn't done it correctly. Anyway, I think us being special education teachers is probably really why we get involved in this kind of assessment and thinking about this kind of assessment. So I've called it the missing piece, other assessment strategies. So in education, we have this concept of differentiation, and so I'm sure a lot of you may have heard of this. And so I think Alex will also agree with me that we try to model what we want our teachers to do for students in the classroom, either because there are students in there who are gifted or students in there who have special needs of multiple kind of differences. So the definition is the idea of differentiating instruction to accommodate the different ways that students learn involves a hefty dose of common sense, although not all teachers see that, as well as sturdy support in the theory and research of education. This main idea comes from Carol Ann Tomlinson, and she is actually an expert in gifted education. So I feel like this applies to a huge variety of students. It is an approach to teaching that advocates active learning for student differences in the classroom. So like I said, we try to model this for our teachers. This is what we want you to do when you go out there. And so I asked them, you know, who likes multiple choice quizzes? Some raise a hand. Who likes group work? We have a big discussion about, no, I don't like group work, and why don't you like it? And because not everybody pulls their own weight. You know, all the things to do with that. Who would like to do a written essay? Who would like to do this? So I point out to the class, okay, see, all of you like different kinds of approaches to assessment and different kinds of approaches to learning. So this is our modeling of our ideas. So there are 3 components to differentiating instruction. The first one is the process, and this is how we present information. So last week I was asking a class, well, how many ways could we put over the battle at Antietam in the Civil War? So we came up with a list of like 22 different ways. It could be a movie, it could be a reenactment, it could be a diorama, you know, all these kind of ways in which we could give input to our students, helping them to know the main idea and the main concepts behind a specific thing. And then how can we differentiate the content? And I sort of thought about our projects, project 1, 2, and 3 in this area. And so this involves what information is given, the amount, the intricacy, the detail, the level, etc. And then the product, and this is the one we're going to talk about mostly this afternoon. What can we count as teachers as a demonstration for our students to show us, I know this material? And I think this is where we sort of have taken off on this kind of idea. We feel that they can show us in multiple ways. And you've probably all heard of the theories of multiple intelligences. And so what is it I will accept for you to show me, I know this material. I can apply it, I can generalize it, I can use it in novel situations, you know, all of those kind of things that we want students to do with their knowledge. Not just memorizing, not just giving back facts. You know, if you think about Bloom's taxonomy, that's the lower level of understanding. But how could they show us in more critical thinking, problem solving. Alex is going to, sorry.
And one of the things that, again, to reiterate what she said, that we try to model the practice for our candidates is the idea that there is not one assessment only that measures everything. And what our candidates are expected to do when they get into their profession, into their teaching, is they're going to be asked to use multiple measures, multiple formats of testing, or of assessment. So I wanted to step back a little bit and just define the difference between the formative assessment and the summative assessment. And I think that in a way, our candidates, our students, sometimes approach every assessment that we give them as a summative assessment. They see it as what is a grade and how much is it going to count and what do I need to do to get the best grade. And I think that because we're teaching not only the content, but to model this idea of teaching how to use your assessment, we do both. We do some formative assessments and we do some summative assessments. So formative assessments, in a way, is this low stake testing. We give you this assessment. There is not really a grade for it, but it does inform me where you are with the content. So at any time I can give you this assessment, and it takes multiple forms. It could be a ticket out the door. It could be questioning, and questioning is a little bit difficult. How do we gauge the questions? How do we call on volunteers and non-volunteers, and how do we randomize our sampling so that everybody gets called upon, and what technology do we use to do this? And I'm going to show you an example in a minute. But the whole idea of formative assessment is for me. Can I gauge where they are with the content? Summative is more high stake in the sense that this is going to be that graded assignment, that graded product that at the end is going to be reflected in their course, in their grade. And so I try to walk them through the process that we build up for the summative assessment through the use of formative assessment. And so it prepares them in a way, and the formative assessment allows me to use multiple ways. It doesn't have to be a quiz. It doesn't have to be a pop quiz. It doesn't have to be a paper. It could be a project. It could be an activity. It could be something as simple as 4 corners, where I throw a topic and you choose a corner where you want to go according to what you believe the answer is, or according where you stand on this product. So that involves a little bit more of, let me assess your knowledge, but also let me get you moving. I know this sounds a little bit off of what you're expected to do in higher education, but I think the fact that our students come from that type of assessment in K-12 schools and come from that expectation that this is what they're going to be able to do, I think speaks to them in the sense of, okay, we're modeling what we're going to be asked to do. We're being part of the process. And when we go back to summative assessment, then I try to include them both. So one of the tests that I give in the class that we share, SPED 316, I tell them it's 5 sections, 5 different forms of assessment. The first section is going to be fill in the blanks. The second section is going to be multiple choice. The third section is going to be an essay. The fourth section is going to be yes, no, and the fifth section is going to be matching terms, which sounds very basic, but again, it requires different skill set in order to be able to answer these. So I'm able to not only assess their content, but also their comfort level with assessment and the way we use assessment. It kind of avoids some of the, well, I'm not a good test taker, or I'm not a good essay writer, I'm not a good multiple choice question person, I'm not a good yes, no. I'm like, well, okay, well then you have, an opportunity to show it in different ways. And students have responded well to that. They respond well to that differentiation where they feel that their voice was heard and the assessment speaks to their strength and their ability. So when we look at the different classes where we do these assessments, we've kind of listed them in an order of how supposedly some students will take it. EDUC 199 is our Introduction to the Teaching Profession course. It's a survey course, and similar to the course that is present in other majors, but if you're considering education, if you think you want to go into teaching, you take this course, and we talk about education, we talk about why you want to be a teacher, and you're required to complete 20 hours of observation in a school. SPED 316 is a course that all education candidates take. It is an introduction to exceptionalities, and pretty much we see all students, between Dr. McClung and myself, we see all students are going to be teacher licensure candidates, except for the special education majors that take SPED 320. SPED 335 is our gifted instruction class. That means it's a course dedicated to teaching you how to work with gifted students, and it's required for all special education candidates. SPED 349 or 582, and you see it is cross-listed as a graduate course, is collaboration, and it's a class that it kind of gets our candidates thinking about how are they going to collaborate with other practitioners, with parents, and colleagues in the field. And then we go back to SPED 316 with the extended constructive response that Dr. McClung is going to talk specifically about. So if I can point you to this handout right here, and you may not all have it, but you can look on and we can get you copies. This is a big piece of the course, and it's our, what is here, assessment for Project 1. And the name of this article, this piece that we collect, is called Understanding My Calling Essay. And we talk to our practitioners about the importance of, do you understand your calling, and does it relate to teaching? Is your calling teaching? We cannot assume that they're going to take this course and everybody's going to want to be a teacher. Similarly to where they take your classes and they end up coming to education because they said, okay, we're going to try this. So as you can see, we use a rubric here. And this is an assessment that kind of embeds different components of the classroom. It talks about your observation, the 20 hours of observation. It talks about your understanding of calling, your understanding of how all this comes into play. This is a very important assessment for us. It's a sample of the writing as well as a way of getting into their headspace of where are you with this concept of teaching? Where are you? Are you choosing to be a teacher or not? And if not, how does this relate to your calling? It's probably the first very important assessment that we're going to give them, that we're going to use to follow them through all the way until their capstone course. And this initial assessment relates to a capstone course later on that it's going to be titled more, it's like Knowing My Calling. So you're linking both this initial assessment with that final assessment. All right, SPED 316 string activities.
I apologize again about the handout, but this is what I'm going to talk about here, this first one. But this is an idea from D-Think. So when I went to the conference or the workshop and listened to some of his ideas about integration, and when he put this up as being a model of assessment, I thought to myself, oh, I'm doing that. And I didn't know what it was called or anything. So I'll just read very briefly. You can see it involves, you could call it layered assessment if you want to. So it involves doing a string of activities for which you might get a grade, but it goes towards a culminating product, a culminating project. So you can read through his. He's building on sources and research throughout. And then if you look on the second page of that particular handout, he says each step in this string of activities prepared students for the next step, and the whole set of activities resulted in a major product that was valuable to the students themselves. Most of these activities were done out of class, although some in-class time was spent allowing students to share what they had done or found. So behind that is my example, which I had actually already been doing. So I won't read through all of it, but if you look at week 4 where I begin, so we've done the introduction to the course and we've read some stuff and discussed some various things. The final product is for them to get up and teach a lesson to the whole class, and they have to differentiate the instruction, and they have to pick a particular disability. So if they have to simulate the disability in the classroom. So that maybe they have a student who's blind, and so they have to smear Vaseline on the glasses, or they have someone who can't hear, so they have to put in earplugs, or they have someone with cerebral palsy, so they have to put oven gloves on that person because they find it difficult to write. So I start off by week 4. This is an introductory session. So I identify common groups based on their content areas. And I always tell them it's kind of like that game we play in England where you're called an animal. So all rats in this corner, all pigs in this corner, all donkeys in this corner, excepting it is all music majors in this corner, all English majors in this corner, because as Alex said, we teach all 600 of our majors this particular course. And so they get into their content areas, and then I ask them to do these things. Also select a specific disability or disabilities that you're going to simulate in the final presentation. Then I tell them to divide the work assignments containing components A, B, C, and D, which I'll mention in a few minutes. I ask them to exchange email information, because I don't want any excuses like, oh, well, my group, we couldn't contact each other, so, and they have to provide me with a copy of the emails. And also appoint a coordinator in the group as they see fit. Because groups, we want there to be equal responsibility, not every two people doing all the work in one group. So week 6, they have to submit component A. And this is a piece of work on the classroom and school demographics. They select a school, one that they know or one that they find online, and they have to submit a couple of paragraphs or more on the grade level, the number of students in that school, what kind of disabilities, other learning needs, whether it's an urban, rural school, what community resources, and we call this, contextual factors background to a school setting. Then on week 8, they have to submit component D. And this is a case study, and also they complete a referral form, and I do one with them in class as a demonstration. So here they go more specifically towards the disability. They complete the attached referral form based on how the student might have looked when they were much younger, before they were referred to special education. And then they have to find the federal definition of the disability, how it affects the student in the classroom, and they have to give 5 suggested accommodations or modifications. How would they differentiate the instruction for that student in the classroom? And then week 10, they have to hand in a lesson plan, which is the lesson that they're finally going to teach to their students. And you can see that's worth 75 points. So the points are building, and the activities are building on each other as well. And you can see everything that I require in the lesson plan. The last paragraph there, they have to describe at least 3 of the following areas: what the classroom would look like, the content that they're teaching, maybe problems with behavior, what would be the social expectations, how would they test those particular students, and what technology they might need. And then the final presentation, weeks 13 to 15, they actually have to get up and teach the lesson. And it's fun, it's really fun. So you can see by that time they've built the information towards this final product. And the whole assignment is worth 200 points. So I don't, maybe we could take questions at the end, but if anybody does something similar. So I was happy to know that I was doing something already that Dr. Fink had recommended in the significant learning experiences. So that's that one.
What I particularly like about this project, and what I find that the students like, is that it's not your traditional presentation. Something that I've noticed over the last few years, or I can say 5, but that's how long I've been here, is that at the end it's presentation time, and the students are aware of it, and they see it coming, and it's a series of PowerPoints, and what do they call the PowerPoint dance, and you know who they are, they stand there and they rock back and forth. There's that one student whose whole job is to smack the keyboard advancing the PowerPoint. And so what this project lets us do is give a different approach to presenting. So what they're doing is they're teaching the lesson, and the group is the class. Like Dr. McClung mentioned, one of the first things that they do is they design the demographics of their classroom, and we reproduce those demographics in our class. So there's going to be 22% are going to be above average students, 20% are going to be below average students. Then you're going to have this group of students in the middle who are your on grade level students, and then you're going to have your population of students who are who manifest disabilities. So it's really fun for them. It kind of builds up to it. I do say we're not trying to sabotage your lesson, but if you tell us there's 10 kids with ADHD in your classroom, you better, have something prepared. And, I've run out of class before. I've, knocked desks over because they told me you're going to be a kid who's upset, who has emotional behavior disorders. I'm like, okay, I'll go with that. One of the things that we also do in SPED 316, and you will notice that it attaches to kind of like our former QEP, which was a critical thinking, and you have this rubric right here, but we do these questions, almost like these essential questions, and we ask them, these guide our topics. One of the questions, the one that we dealt with specifically this week, is why is it that all students with special needs have all the behavior problems? And that's a very bold statement to make, especially to a room of practitioners who are going to be all regular education majors. Well, the reason that we do this is because we want them to think in that sense, but also let's step back. So The first thing that we do is a brainstorming. Again, we model that technique. Oh, let's talk about it. Do we sing the little brainstorming song from, from Barney or something? However you want to do it. But we brainstorm together, and then I ask them to identify the most likely idea. Some people are saying, oh, because they do have issues, or because they don't understand receptive and expressive language, or they struggle with these things. By this point, they're already drawing in information from the content. We've already discussed all these things. I'm just asking them more to be more specific, more intentional with their answers. The next thing is a formulated hypothesis. And in a way, the reason that I like doing this project is because it's making them think of research. What research is available out there? Draw your hypothesis, come up with a statement, and then go explore. Go find the information. And so not only are you acquiring the content, but you're also learning the process of exploration, the process of research. What reliable sources? I kind of included this one specifically because they were coming up with blogs. Now, there is some discussion out there, in the research community. Can we consider blogs as a form of research? Some people are pro, some people are against. For this time, I kind of discourage them from considering blogs. But I want them to list what are some reliable sources. What do you consider a reliable source? Article journal, peer review, teacher magazines, the book, as opposed to just, this blurb that came up in, when I did a search, because that's usually how they start. What are reliable sources? Are the suggested sources appropriate for the research? And I do evaluate them on this. I do say, no, I don't think your sources were appropriate. And I tell them why. And again, this is a formative process. I'm helping you kind of come up with the appropriate way of doing this. Did the candidate cite APA? And I know there's a little bit of cringe in the room about that. I'm APA, pro APA. Some people are MLA. I think we will both have a place in heaven. Did the candidate provide a brief summary of the source selected? And so one of the things that I want them to do in my assessments is I tell them, as a teacher, one, you're not going to have time to write everything down. Two, you need to be careful what you write down because everything is subject for interpretation. And if it's a document and a student, it's an open document, so it could be subpoenaed. So don't write too much. And I say, I want you to be as specific, as concise as you can. If you can say it in one paragraph, that's good. If you can say it in two, that's okay. But if you need to say it in three, then you're not being concise. You need to tailor down. This, in a way, helps me truly get to what they're trying to say and take away what they call the fluff. I tell them, don't try. I will read one page, I will consider a page and a half, but I will stop at two. I know that goes against, but for me, it's not about the amount of paper that you submit, but it's about the content that you include. All right, did the candidate effectively communicate considerations of the implications of the research on his teaching? Critical point. How does this inform your teaching? This is what we want them to do. Many of the assessments that we do in education are reflective in nature. Can you reflect? Can you take the information that you have and link it to what you're studying? Well, okay. How does this information that you know now about behavior and disabilities impact your teaching, your practice, your future role as a teacher? And I think that's very important. It's very telling also, because it lets me see that some students get it and some students don't. And those students who don't get it, after I read this, I'm able to pull them aside and say, tell me about your hypothesis. Tell me why you feel this way. And let's just do that dialogue, which is a formative way of me being able to get, again, what are you thinking? Where did the communication get blocked or something? Did the candidate effectively address how the research may or may have not supported his hypothesis and why? I'm okay with that. And I say, you need to be okay if your hypothesis is not proven. Granted, in the future, you don't want that to be the case. You want your hypothesis to be proven by your research. But if your hypothesis was not proven, tell me why. Why was it not proven? I ask them to do this, and I caution them very heavily against, don't go find the research and then come up with your hypothesis. Write your hypothesis, then do the research, and if it doesn't work, that's great. I'm okay with that, but tell me why it didn't work. And again, it's using one assessment to teach another form of assessing. And one of the things that I feel very strongly about our candidates is really truly being able to identify what's considered viable research and what's good research and what they should steer away from. And lastly, of course, I have to put grammar and spelling because, still spell check is an option that they can click on in some assignments. The other course that we teach is SPED 335, which is the teaching of the gifted and talented. And this is a fun course to teach because we're talking about gifted and talented students in a demographic class that not everybody's gifted and talented, and so it's a very interesting concept in the sense that our candidates don't always understand why in Tennessee we consider gifted and talented to be part of special education. Many of our candidates go into special education thinking that they're going to work with students who are specifically performing below average or dealing with a disability that really limits their ability to perform in the classroom. So we are dedicating a whole class, 3 times a week, 3 credit hours, to talking about students who are performing above average. In a way, the students who have been, depending which side you take, being neglected by our educational system, the dwindling of our potential. So we do presentations at the end, again, in true form, students present, but what we do differently is that students are doing this activity. It's a KWL chart, which is a very basic assessment tool. It's a very, you probably did them in school yourself, but one of the first things that I ask them to do is, what do you already know? So we are assessing prior knowledge. And in gifted education, it's very important to assess prior knowledge because it allows us to either compact and move on or to accelerate them. I don't want you to teach me what I already know, or I don't feel that you should be teaching the group what they already know. What would you like to know? So it's very choice-driven. What do you want to learn about gifted females or gifted underachievers? What do you want to know about bullying of gifted students? And then as they go through the presentation, they have to write down, what did you learn? Now, learning is very hard to assess because it's a very abstract concept, and unless you have a good measure, how do you assess that somebody learned something? Well, you have to tell me, what did you learn? What information did you gather from this? At the very bottom, how does this information, again, inform your teaching, inform your practice? So don't just tell me that you learned that gifted females are underrepresented and there's different pay scales and there's a lot of sexism in the workplace. Tell me, how does this affect you? How are you going to impact your gifted girls in your classroom to overcome these issues, these things that may restrict them from being able to move forward? Tell me why schools discourage girls to going into engineering and things like that. And we get into these discussions. On the second page, or actually it's probably the third, it's a modification of this sheet that we use, but it's a little bit more detailed. I'm not asking you to tell me what you learned, but tell me, how is this important? So we have the topic, and this is, tell me 2 things that are interesting, or fill this with interesting facts. Just tell me things that popped out to you. I want to know what you found to be interesting. We also have the implications. So this is interesting, but what does this mean? What is the implication of this? What's important? Why do we have gifted underachievers? Why is underachievement a learned behavior? And if underachievement is a learned behavior, that means that, can we unlearn it? And we have a discussion, can you unlearn underachievement? Then we have some plus things and then some minus things. What is positive about this and what is negative about this? This goes very well if your presentation goes past the KWL, because then it lets us get a little bit deeper. It goes into the conversation. I also have included this right here, and I don't know if you've ever used Today's Meet. So this is, if you want to go here, if you want to pull out your mobile device, like any student, it's a good time to pull out your cell phone. It's called Today's Meet, and right now it's CTE 110515. That's the URL. If you type it in your phone, if you type it in your iPad or into your laptop, it's a free domain and you can get in there. So what I'll do is I'm going to put in my name, and my name is Alex San. Okay. I'm going to join. Now this is free to join, so I'm going to type a message. So what do you think about gifted girls? All right, so I'm going to throw this out there. Anybody who joins this, who goes to this URL, is able to type in their answer. The reason that I do this is because questioning is a very important form of assessment. I can gauge where the tone of the class is based on the questioning. However, you've probably noticed that not every student is comfortable talking. Now that for me has no implication. I've used tickets before. Students don't like that. I used to give them tickets for every time you say something, and at the end you can, trade them in for a reward. They don't like that. They feel pressured. They feel coerced into talking. I knew that because they put it in my evaluation. Some of us don't feel comfortable talking. You're going to be a teacher, you should talk. So you do this, and so whoever joins in, you can put whatever name you want. You don't have to write your name. You don't have to write Alex. You don't have to write Trish. You can write, I like mustard, and that'll be your name. Or, you know, Bernstein and Eliza Doolittle. Okay, that's your name. So you write it, and then you answer the question. And that question then leads to more questions. And then people can post their questions, and I will answer them as we go along. One thing that it lets us do is it lets us color code them. So I can actually color code, and everybody's question is going to come up, and I can answer that question. But the best thing, though, it lets me save the transcript and then post that transcript onto Moodle as a Word document. So we're discussing very important, important things like theories on gifted education or theoretical frameworks, which we discussed. Do Renzulli and all those different things. I can then post this whole conversation on Moodle to where they'll have that conversation. So it's really neat in the sense that it does give your non-participants a chance to participate. Of course, you have to regulate it. Oh, there you go. So we have hello, she needs help, or he needs help. All right, and so I would say, all right, how can I help you at hello? You see, so now we have a conversation. Then somebody else will jump in and say, good point, hello, or thank you for talking to me. And so we get into the, handout two.
No, you handed it to.
Okay, that is for Dr. McClung. I'm just kidding. Pass the blame. But you see, so we have this, and then I can save this transcript. It's really neat. I mean, some of your students will throw in some humor. In gifted class, we got into a discussion about, transformers and energon and the importance of having your energon before you come to class. Now this means nothing to you, but for some people out there, talking about transformers is pretty relevant. And so we kind of divert it. It does allow us that. So I do encourage you to explore some of these things right here. It does really make your class, it lets you do something different. The coming semester, I want to use it in our Teaching Diverse Learners class. The reason why is because we discuss topics of diversity which are not the most comfortable to discuss. And since there's a sense of anonymity with this, some people are going to feel more comfortable talking about it. So when we discuss alternative lifestyles, when we discuss issues of immigration, some students don't feel comfortable talking because they're afraid they're going to get attacked. Well, this will give us a forum to be able to discuss freely and say, okay, what do you truly feel? How do you feel about this? So I do encourage you to explore that and try it. It's a formative assessment. It helps me guide the conversation, and it gives me a way to go back and say, no, we did discuss this, and we look at these things.
I think I'd like just to say at this point that Alex and I spend hours talking about things. You can perhaps, because we work on the same class, and I'll go, I say, hey, I found this, what do you think? And I think that's such a good thing, to have this collegiality with somebody who you can talk with, and he was my student, so that shows my age and his brilliance. So
He's also my mentor. So
yeah,
everything I know.
But we,
that woman Reddick.
yeah, thank you. But we do honestly talk about things that we do. So I just encourage you to find somebody who could go over things with and say, what about this? Or do you think this would work? Or let's try this out. For me, it's been so valuable. We teach the same class, but he's also taken over classes from like the gifted class, and we've shared things. We share ideas all the time. So my next one is the dreaded oral examination. And I have to admit that I came on this by mistake because I had a lot of people in the class, and the typical examination I give here is 10 long answers. So they have to write at least a page on a topic. They select 10 topics out of about 20. And so I realized, okay, I've got 33 people in this class. Do I want to grade and read 330 pages of work? So I thought, okay, this would be a great preparation for some who are going to go on to do masters and doctoral work. And you know what? Like we've said already, they're going to be teachers. They need to be able to get up and explain ideas and to speak in front of people. So this is the assessment bit is looks like this, and I'm sorry about the packets again. So I thought, I'm going to give an oral examination. I won't have, they'll all hear every topic again, and I won't have to grade 330 pages. It's practice for them, and so this is the assignment. And I put there are X number of topics, and I do base it on the number of people in the class. And typically in this class, I have at least 26 major topics to talk about. You should have prepared answers on each topic. So they have to prepare something on each topic. So there's quite a lot of work up front for them. You may bring your notes to class, and they will be handed in at the end of the examination. So they hand the notes into me, the prepared notes on each topic. On entering the room, you will be assigned one topic, which is topic 1, to present on and discuss for up to 2 minutes. So they have to get up and say discuss Bronfenbrenner's systems theory, or the Kubler-Ross grief cycle as it applies to disabilities, or loaded words, like, so when you're meeting with a parent and you say, you know, oh, he does everything wrong. So we do a whole thing on loaded words. This is about collaboration with teachers, parents, and other professionals. So they have to discuss one topic for 2 minutes. This is in the final examination period. Then you will be assigned one other topic, topic 2, on which to formulate 3 questions at the beginning of the examination time. So when they get their topic 2, they have to formulate 3 questions on that topic that they're going to ask the speaker on that topic. After your presentation on topic 1, you will be asked 3 questions by a classmate on that topic. After the presentation on your topic number 2, you will then ask your classmate about, after the presentation on topic 2, you will ask your classmate about that topic. All notes and questions will be handed in at the end of the examination. So you can see the rubric that I use. So if you look at the exemplary, and these categories follow our School of Education national assessments. So we have to have, this is part of our national assessment and the assessment in the College of Ed. So if you look at exemplary, organisation presents information in a clear, logical, interesting sequence which audience can follow, and they get 30 points for that. So that's their topic 1. Then the content, demonstration of depth of knowledge with elaboration and explanations. And then B, the part B on the content, answered all questions ably and with accuracy. Then the delivery, materials presented with confidence, enthusiasm, proper voice projection, good eye contact, clear delivery, and does not read from notes. And then their questioning of others' ideas. Questions posed concerning others' ideas showed excellent knowledge of content. So when I first tell them they're going to do this, like they're like, you know, no, I can't do that. I say, yes, you can do it. But honestly, after that, I hear them leave the room and they say they loved it. I love it. They feel proud of themselves. They've made notes on everything. They have become sort of an expert on one thing, and then, you know, they can pose questions on the other topic as well. So this is dreaded to start with, but loved at the end, generally speaking. And I think it's good preparation for the future. The last thing that Alex and I both do, and this again is because we want teachers to reflect what's going on in the school. If you could find this piece of paper, if you can, or you can look on somebody else's, and this is the idea of assessment through constructed responses. And we call ours an extended constructed response, because I'll explain what actually happens in the school system. So if you just look at that, we give this as a guide to them. Think of using the following phrases to demonstrate that you have used the text to support your answers. So we give sort of, you know, starting words like the cause. For instance, for example, the authors state, according to the text, on page such and such, it said, or the text feature lists, because we talk about text features, like the text box, they could be graphs, they could be tables, so they have to look at the text features as well. And they could write things like, from the text, I know, I believe, I think that. Based on what I read, I can deduce, I can make connections with, I can connect to the idea of. What grade level do you think this is in school? This is actually handed out in a K-12 setting. To what grade do you think this is handed? Tell me. Guess.
7th.
7th? 5th? Anyone else? 8? Third grade. My husband's whispering at the back, I don't know if he's going to say third. Yeah, third grade are asked to do this. So what they're given is a text, and this is the text we use for our students for the final examination. They are given a text, and then they have to answer certain questions, and they have to kind of write at least 2 sentences using those kind of words. You know, in the box or the text feature or the picture or the table, it's I get from that, or they perhaps don't use the word I deduce, but I get from that such and such is the correct answer. So we know that our teachers are teaching that to students, 2nd, 3rd grade up, and so we want them to be able to do it as well. So for our final examination in this class, we provide this article. We give it out about a week beforehand. We say you can take this with you. You can mark on this. You can highlight common themes. You can make notes on it. You can't bring any other notes into the class, but you can use this article. You're going to bring the article with you. And you'll even be surprised that I actually saw a picture of it on Facebook, all highlighted green and yellow and pink, different kind of ideas. So we say bring this with you to the final exam, and then you'll be provided with the exam. So the exam is 4 pages long. There's only 4 questions on the article. And this generates an enormous amount of writing and material. So I have had as many as 9 typed pages, because we'll allow them to come. They can use a laptop in the exam time, or they can handwrite it. So every single student writes at least 4 pages. And this is what I liked about it, because it generates a lot of material and a lot of ideas. So the question, so if you just want to look at question 1, it says, describe the constituency of North Topsail Elementary School. List all reasons as to why the school administrators believed it was necessary to change the overall approach to teaching. So, you know, that information is in the text that we've given them. And then the second one would address the necessity for them to look at text boxes, because there's some ideas in some of the boxes in some of the text. And I think Joanne uses this as well, don't you? So we also developed this rubric, analytic rubric for grading extended constructed responses. And I know that Joanne has taken this and used this in one of her classes as well. So if you look at that, it's a fairly complicated scoring rubric actually, because it's like the second, they're worth 4.3 at the top, and you have to have a calculator with you. Sometimes I think I make it more complicated than it needs to be, but it's just been we feel a big success. Again, they're proud of what they've done at the end, how much they've written, how much they've understood. And the question that actually is generally the weakest is this analysis section. So if anybody has any ideas for this, says makes excellent analysis of the text in order to make quality and relevant connections with course content where appropriate. So whilst this article really sums up everything we've tried to teach in the course, we still find they have difficulty making really good, you know, to say they would make a point, and then we want them to say, as in the text in connection with the class, we also learned this, or this was also pointed out to us. So this is something we constantly work on, and we thought of, you know, when we think about defing and integrating ideas, I say, you know, think about what we learned about behaviour, think about what we learned about effective instruction. Pull that into the article, because that's what the article is about as well. So I think they're sort of our basic ideas. Yeah, any questions, comments, thoughts? As I say, I think our most valuable thing is that we have a lot of discussions, talk about, we modify it, let's change this, let's do something a little different.
You might also want to know, for early classes, you can get an embedded librarian. Students are very offended if you do this if they already know. But at the second beginning level class, you can get a librarian who will devote him or herself to your class. They'll come in and make a presentation, but then there'll also be a face that your students can go to in the library. And they'll, you know, that's going to be part of their assignment, is to take care of your class as they do their research throughout the semester. So that's kind of a cool thing. I did it once with a class that thought they were above it. That's not a good thing. If they already know it, don't tell them, because I don't want to hear it again. But, you know, if they're not on that level. So anyway, thank you. Anybody have any last minute questions? Okay, thank you so much for coming, and I'm sure that these lovely people would be willing to follow up if you have questions as you work on this for later.
And we can put